Welcome to Arise Life, a community of believers being equipped, empowered, and released into their destiny. For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. It was funny. I was asking the Lord, well, it's going to be December 1st. Do we need to switch to, Christmas themed? And I felt like God said, no, we need to keep going with anger. This is just a beautiful theme for the season. It's the most wonderful time of the year. We're cutting each other off and screaming. No. And I don't know about you. Some of you all had Thanksgiving, and you discovered that can produce rage and anger. Blink twice. Don't nudge. But, okay, you know what I'm talking about. And so the Lord at the beginning of the week told me what passage he wanted us to go over. And I'll be honest, I was like, yeah, no. I don't have that. I can't bring that. And he kind of kept pressing on me. And I finally gave in, but I still didn't have the sense of what he was doing. But it so became clear in the middle of worship. So the issue, anger is the result of the fact that we live in a fallen world, a broken world, an evil world. And so the problem, in philosophy, there's this question called the problem of evil. And it's really simple. Is there evil in the world? Yes. Okay. There is evil. What is evil? Evil is brokenness. It is selfishness. It is people hurting each other. It is everything that is not the way it was intended to be, right? Darkness. Every despicable thing. Evil. There is evil. But we're claiming there is God, right? So if there is evil and there is God, the problem of evil is put this way, that if God is all-powerful, but he lets there be evil, then he must be bad. Or bad at his job, right? I know you're not supposed to say this stuff out loud in church, but deal with it. All right. But the other side of it is, well, maybe he's good, but if he's good and he lets evil exist, then he must be weak. And you end up in a corner with either a weak good God or a powerful bad God. Now I'm going to put you on the spot. Okay, I'm not saying which one you believe in, because we know we believe in a different God. It's okay. But every one of us has a tendency to see God as one of these two. Do you understand what I'm saying? So everybody's got to vote once. Oh, no. So which of these is the tendency? You have a tendency to see God as weak but good. I'd love to help, but I can't. Or powerful and bad, or bad at his job. Okay, so who are my people? Weak but good. Okay. Who are my powerful but bad? Who didn't vote? Awesome. Okay. You're cut off. No, the problem is, if God is good, why does he allow evil? But the reality is, so any of you felt like God just sits up there and goes, wow. Yeah, yes, you're an idiot. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But the reality, and I mentioned this before, God, the one who's described as being the more angry than anybody else, is God in Scripture. Because God is angry at evil. God is angry at evil. And so we're going to dive into something because, and this is how it connects with Christmas, because Christmas is God's answer to evil. Christmas is that part in the movie where they're like, we're sending you into enemy territory. You are going to take on the form of one of the local citizens. You'll have to speak the language. You're going to sneak in all the way into the headquarters and blow it up. That's what this is. This is a action movie where God is inserting himself into evil, into hell. And I love that line from Orthodoxy, that he entered hell and filled it with himself. The devil locked the doors after he invited Jesus in and turned around, and Jesus like, you just made a boo-boo. right? This is God's answer. And so we're going to watch this. And my prayer is today, God will shift for each of us an understanding of who God is from this passage that I don't like. Okay? So you guys, if you guys got Bibles, flip open to Exodus 32. But while you're turning there, I'm just going to bring back the verse we've been living off of, which is Ephesians 4:26, right? He says, be angry. And many of you have taken that to heart. But don't sin in it. Well, that sounds easy. And don't let the sun go down on your anger. So, first of all, don't use anger as an opportunity to sin, but also don't be angry long, or you will sin. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, so, and because if you do, then you're going to give the devil a foothold in your heart and life. Anybody, right? Anybody here, you started out with good anger, you're like, that is wrong. And the next minute you ended up somewhere entirely different. You know, you became the wrathful God all by yourself, calling down fire. Remember, Peter, James and John, they got ticked off because the Samaritans wouldn't sell them food and treated them badly. And they're like, Jesus, you want us to call down fire? God, Jesus is like, you don't even know what spirit you are of, right? So the thing about it is anger is actually God's idea. We talked about this last week, that anger is a signal that something is not right. But we tend to have one of two responses to anger. Either we suppress it, right? Who are my people? Yay. Awesome. You only get two choices again. Sorry. You either suppress it, right? And we talked about that image from Madagascar where they broke the fuel gauge was blinking and making noise, so they broke the fuel gauge. No more problem, right? You know, anybody found that suppressing anger makes all your problems go away? Yeah. Anybody ever had somebody smile at you and you felt like you were looking at a lion with its teeth? I know, I'm fine. We're good. Is there a problem? No. I'm going to kill you. Right? But the other one is if we don't suppress it, what do? We express it. A little for you, a little for you. Right? Anybody done that? You know, like, and if you suppress it long enough, you will express it with interest. Anybody gotten the back end of somebody's rage that you weren't even a part of? You're like, what was that? Like, you know, I gave you a level 1 reason and you gave me a level 10 response, right? So suppressing, and they've done studies, and it didn't take them very long to figure out suppressing anger does bad things to you, right? It just will eat your body alive. But do you know, expressing anger is just as toxic. Not just to other people, but it actually doesn't make you less angry. It makes you more angry. Because you realize by expressing it, you're not actually addressing the issues. Because, see, that's the answer. We don't suppress or express. We address what anger is trying to tell us. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Sorry, we'll get rid of those bad gods. Don't suppress. I stole this from somebody, by the way. Don't suppress or express. Because anger isn't anything other than a signal. It's not something in and of itself. But address the issue, what it's showing you. But the problem with that, there's a couple things. One is I have to know what it's trying to tell me. Anybody, you had anger and you couldn't even figure out what it was about? Right? Many of us, we were taught you're not allowed to be angry. You know what that does? That creates this huge sea of anger inside and doesn't have a name. But you can find someone to pour it out on. Right? So you first have to know what it is telling you. What is it telling? But the second thing is, just because you know the problem, do you know the solution? And you seem confused. You guys have the solutions? Please tell me. No, but just because we know the problem, we don't have the solution, no matter how much we think we do. And so what do we have to do? We have to go, God, when anger comes up, what do you want me to know about this? What is the issue? And the second thing, what do you want me to do in response to it? And do you know many times, you know what God will tell me what to do when I'm angry? He'll show me the problem and I'll say, what do you want me to do about it? And he said, nothing. Give it to me. I'd rather do something if it's all the same to you. Right? But anyway, so this is what's happening. But I've said this before. We're going to watch God getting angry. And it's going to be good. So in Exodus 20, we saw this moment. God has brought the people of Israel out of Egypt. He's brought them up to Mount Sinai. It's taken them a few weeks to get there. He says, okay, guys, you wait at the bottom. Moses is going to come up and he's going to lay out the party for you all. Moses goes up there. It's amazing. Fire's coming down, lightning. It's like, whoa! And he said, don't touch the mountain or you'll die. Moses goes up there and God gives him the 10 commandments. He said, if you want to do life with me, all you got to do is 10 rules. And I think why he did 10 commandments? Because we have 10 fingers. He's like, we can keep track of this. This is simple, boys and girls. 10 commandments. And they weren't hard. They weren't hard. And don't kill people. Haven't yet today. Great. Right? And so he gave him 10 things, except for one. He said, don't covet. When you're like, that was your sign there's more going on. But anyway, Moses comes down off the mountain. He says, God now wants you guys to come up because he wants you all to be priests. He wants you all to have a relationship with him. And what did the people of Israel say? Chapter 20, it says, whatever my verse is. It says, Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you so that your fear of God will keep you from sinning. But come on up. And the people, though, remained at a distance, saying that verse 18. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled in fear, and they stayed at a distance and said to Moses, speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But we do not have God speak to us, or we will die. God wanted them to have a relationship with him, but he wanted them to value the relationship and realize it's a relationship with God. It's not a genie. It's not a ATM. And he said, so come on up. I said, do you think you can keep these 10 rules to do life with me? And they were like, we don't trust you. We think you'll kill us. And so instead of having a relationship, they said, but we want the benefits of a relationship with God without actually having the relationship with God. And that's how we went from 10 rules to 200 rules to 600 rules. Because if I have to give you rules to tell you how to love me, it's going to be a very thick book. Does that make sense? But if we can have a relationship as we're walking through life, I can explain to you, that hurt me. Please don't do that. I can explain little things. But if I have to just give you a rule book, it's not going to work. And so this is how we get to this point. We get to this point. So Moses goes back up on the mountain and he gets some more rules. Verse 32, he's getting the 10 commandments. He's written down. Why do they need to be written down on tablets? Because they don't want them written on their hearts. Anyway, and while he's up there, chapter 32, verse 1. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down the mountain for 40 days, which I don't know about you, but I was like, it's just 40 days. Anybody here done a 40-day diet? 40 days gets long pretty quick when you don't know when it's going to end. When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, come, make us gods who will go before us. The God of the universe was showing up. What kind of God did they see? A God who parted the Red Sea. They saw a God who turned the day to night. They saw a God who literally brought them out of Egypt. They saw this God, and they were like, no, we want a different God. As for this fellow, Moses, who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him. And so Aaron had a great idea. Who are my idea people? Me first. No. Listen, I love this thing. King David, it said, every time he inquired of the Lord, good things happened. Every time he thought to himself, bad things happened. Me, myself, and I, we've decided to get together and have a conference call. And we've decided, right? No. Aaron, instead of inquiring of God, instead of waiting on God, Aaron comes up with a solution. That's how every bad thing in my life has started. And what does he do? Those of you who've read ahead, what does he do? Makes a gold calf. What did he make it out of? Their plunder. Their plunder, right? The stuff that God allowed them to take out of Egypt. Which the plunder was actually the wages they should have been paid for 400 years. They took the very gift of God and blew it. Anybody have a testimony? Don't give me. But you know what I'm talking about. God's like, have a gift. And you're like, ah! Right? They took it and they made it their God. If all I want is the stuff God gives, I'll turn the gift of God into an idol that will kill me. But if I will follow him and serve him, he will take care of my needs according to his riches and glory. And so Aaron built this altar, and they started to, verse 6, it says, so the next day the people rose early, sacrificed burnt offerings, and presented fellowship offerings. It sounds really good. And the problem is I learned about this in Sunday school, and they couldn't tell you the part I'm about to tell you next. I was just like terrified. After they sat down to eat and drink, and they got up to indulge in revelry. Sounds like some sort of medieval thing. Do you know what revelry means? Have you ever been to a frat party that got out of control? Where what happens in this moment is the most powerful people, the scariest people, become the most scary, and the weakest become the food to be abused and taken advantage of. Times 10. When he says revelry, he's talking about widespread abuse. Widespread, because the way they worshipped was through sexual abuse. 1 minute they're worshiping God. But when our stomach becomes our God, suddenly we become the slave. You remember what I said? Anger is the proper response to evil. How do you think a loving father who looks down off the mountain on his kids, who he wanted a relationship with, who've turned away and are now, instead of leaning on him, destroying one another? What do you think he feels? Mad. I think mad is putting it in a very gentle word. But see, here's the problem. Let me give you another example. Have any of you had this experience where, as a little kid, you were about to do something that you might die from? Maybe step out into the road, play with a sharp instrument, and a parent or an adult screamed at you, "Stop!" And you were so scared of them in that moment. That's all you saw. And what you learned was they are scary. You couldn't see that they had just saved your life. See, all of us, we have parents and adults in our life who manifested anger imperfectly, and so it always came with a measure of what? Fear, rage, control. Do you know how I know God doesn't operate out of control? Because there's evil in the world. He knew that if he gave us free will, or evil was the possibility of what would happen. But he said, having free will, your ability to choose a relationship with me is worth it. And so in this point, though, just in this moment, this is the moment, right? And suddenly it went from top of the mountain to bottom of the sea. It said, then the Lord said to Moses, and now this is where I need you to stay with me for a second, because I'm going to lose you for a few seconds, but stay with me. Hold on tight, all right? Put your seatbelt on. Then the Lord said to Moses, go down because who? Your people. Whose people? When did they quit being God's people? Okay, I'm going to tell you a little secret. God often will speak to you first by telling you what's in your heart. Remember what he did? Cain, why are you downcast? Cain, why are you angry? Cain. So when God speaks, his first thing is trying to show us what we already think, but we're not being honest with ourselves to think. Do you think Moses has maybe made them his people? God's not given up on the people. Does that make sense? But sometimes God will speak to us with our own words. Anybody had that? Where God threw your own words back in your face and you're like, never mind, right? Your people whom you brought out of Egypt. I think Moses started to think a little bit big of himself. Yeah, my people have become corrupt. By the way, that word corrupt, again, is a very weak word. That word corrupt, what it was used was the corruption of the people in the time of Noah, when the levels of abuse and violence were so horrific, you can't even imagine it. When he says corrupt, he doesn't mean whoops. He means being devoured. Do you know when a metal becomes corrupted, it is devoured? You are devoured by the thing that you worship. They have become quick to turn away from that which I commanded them. The very first thing, remember? What was the very first commandment? You shall worship God alone and have no other gods before me, right? And don't make a graven image. It was like 1, 2, 3. They were like, we're just working our way through the commandments. I thought it was a to-do list. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded and made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. Why a calf? Because the greatest god of Egypt at that time was a bull. They are worshiping the gods of their masters, their abusers. They have bowed down to it and sacrificed to it and have said, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you out of Egypt. Again, as a kid, I thought, how did they become so dumb so quick? And then as an adult, I have some evidence. Now, God says, I have seen these people. Now, stay with me on this one. The Lord said to Moses, and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them, and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation. Can I just submit something? Did God change his mind? Over in Numbers 23:19, it says, God is not a man that he should lie or change his mind. But I believe God is simply telling Moses what's in Moses' heart. Because even everything he's talking about doesn't sound like God. It sounds a lot like Moses. Your people. Get out of your way. I'll make you the big stuff. I'll make you something. And he's showing Moses his own heart. But Moses sought the favor of the Lord and said, favor of the Lord his God. Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with your great power and mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out to kill them? And he goes on and he begins to argue for the people. Which sounds really good. Anybody here, like you've tried to argue with God because you're a better God than God? 4 of us? You've never done that? Really? Oh, you need to get busy. It's fun. No, I mean, it's horrible because you're like, y'all are so mean and so bad, and you are holding out on people. But I love people, and I will protect them, and I will care for them. God's like, we might want to start with a perspective shift. Just saying. Just saying. And in that moment, he comes, and it says, then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened. I want to put it another way. We see this with Sodom and Gomorrah. God shares his plan with Abraham because he knows how Abraham's going to respond. Abraham says, God, you're not going to destroy a city if there's some righteous people who can turn that city around. Because Sodom and Gomorrah were also just the levels of abuse were horrific. As a result, he goes, listen, if I've got 5 guys in that city who will partner with me, I can turn that whole city around. Let me say this. Anything I'm more impressed with than the cross is the problem. 5 people impressed with the cross of Christ can turn a city around and set people free from domination and control and slavery. 5 people. It's not, you don't have to have a legal majority. 5 people. That's all he needs. But he can't even find one, because even Lot's screwed up. God's looking for people who will partner with him for the sake of people, who will reflect his compassionate heart, because he is what? Compassionate and slow to anger. He's the compassionate one. We're the ones who are quick to anger and slow to be compassionate. So Moses said, whew, man, dodge that bullet. It's a good thing I'm the compassionate one. Right? Isn't it wonderful that he was so compassionate for the people? Because God was not. And Moses turned and went down the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant that he'd waited for 40 days for the slow printing of the tablets. With it, they were inscribed on both sides, front and back. The tablets were the work of God. I don't know about you. That's probably, apart from Jesus coming in the flesh, that's got to be the most incredible, valuable thing. God made this. The gift of God, right? And when Joshua heard the noise of the people shouting, he said to Moses, "There is the sound of war in the camp." Moses replied, "It is not the sound of victory. It is the sound of defeat. It's the sound of singing that I hear." And when Moses approached the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, his compassion arose, and he began to weep and cry out to the people, "Come back to God." Oh, you have something different. He took the greatest gift that mankind had been given up to this point and crushed them, breaking them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. And then he took the calf the people had made, burned it in the fire, and then ground it to powder and scattered it on the ground and made the Israelites drink it. See, not everything that happens in the Bible is a good idea. I think we can get that from Judas, right? But hear me on this. God is looking for people who will have his anger at evil, but have his compassion to bring about a response. He's looking for people who will not be devoured by anger and use it, righteous anger, to crush people. And in fact, I would submit we see this a little later in Numbers, where Moses, it says, God said, "I want to give the people water from the rock. They need water." And Moses, he said, "So I just need you to take your staff and speak to the rock." A little before that, Moses had been instructed to strike the rock and water came out. This time he's told to speak to the rock. So what does he do? He takes the rod and he goes, "You rebels. Oh, you want some water? You want some water? I'll give you some water." Sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? And then he strikes the rock as if he was doing magic. And water comes out of the rock. And God says, "Because you didn't trust me, and in fact instead took things into your own hands, I can't let you lead the people into the promised land." See, when we don't learn to partner with God properly with anger, he can't entrust us with people. Does that make sense? And I would submit, people, there is no destiny you have that doesn't involve people God wants to bless through you. There is no destiny God has given you that is not for the sake of other people. But God cannot entrust you with the destiny he's given you if it will destroy you. And so, a great example for me is Jesus. Do we see Jesus getting angry a lot in the scriptures? He got angry, but do we see it a lot? Okay. How often? Yeah, okay. So we know, when did he get angry? Temple. Any other times? No, he didn't cut out that. He didn't get mad about that. Peter did. He was kind of crazy. So I would submit. I'm putting something out here, because there are two branches of Christianity, and one looks like a bad, powerful God. I will bring righteous vengeance. And the other is a weak, we never get mad. Right? And what God needs are people that he can empower to be righteously angry and not sin, and confront evil and injustice and bring righteousness, but not in our own power, because it will destroy us. God doesn't want to sacrifice you to resolve a problem. He doesn't want that anger to destroy you. So you and I, the call is to learn to partner with God in that. So I'll give you an example with Jesus. Now, some of us, let me show you this is how take place for you. You can self-identify. Jesus destroying the temple. No, I've had it with you. It's more like Tasmanian devil, you know. I mean, it's just raw. Okay, that's Zeus. That's a different God. Okay? It says Jesus carefully braided rope into a whip. And people are like, I know, the beatings are going to begin. Yay, I've been waiting. I have a list. Would you like to see my list, Jesus? It does not say he whipped anybody. But if you have dealt, you know what the place he went into was full of? Cattle. It didn't, I would submit, he made a whip and he started a stampede. And it cleansed out the temple real quick. It doesn't say he was enraged. But what he was angry was that the people were being enslaved. And the anger wasn't devouring him. It wasn't causing him to have an automatic response. It wasn't causing him to flip out. It was causing him to partner with God for a strategy to set his people free. Do you want to be entrusted with divine strategies that set people free? God, again, will not sacrifice you to set other people free. He will not allow you to be devoured by that anger to set others free. But God is looking for people he can entrust. God's original plan was for Moses to take the people into the promised land. Moses took himself out of that. So my question is, what are the relationships in our lives where we are taking ourselves out of being able to partner with God? Where he wants to empower us to bring blessing and to stand against brokenness and injustice. Could there be a story we've been telling ourselves? Anybody here done this? It's okay for me to be mad. It's right for me to be bad. This is messed up. Is that helpful? 3 of us? But I like it. I'm being really, I'm sorry I'm pushing this hard. But too often with rage and anger, we distance ourselves from people. We throw stones from a distance. We justify rage. We justify our outbursts. We justify why we're doing things. In our anger, do not sin. God, what is this anger? What do you want me to know about this anger? And what do you want me to do? What do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? Jesus, like, if I can just get 5 people to agree with me, we can turn this city around. Do you know the number one reason that we are experiencing the lowest rates of sexual abuse in the history of the world? The number one reason we're facing the lowest level of infant mortality, the number one reason why women's rights are the best they've ever been in the history of the world, worldwide. Do you know why the number one reason why the widow and the orphan are more cared for than at any point in history? You want to know the number one reason? Because the leaven of the gospel has gone throughout the world. Not because it was legislated, but because lives were transformed. You know why slavery has been more abolished today than at any point in history? Because the gospel has gone forth. I could map all this out for you in infinite detail. You know the number one reason that throughout sub-Saharan Africa, if you want to track lowest corruption rates, it's all connected to where the gospel has gone and actually transformed lives. I'm not talking about the church, I'm talking about the gospel. They are different. So my question is, each of us, we have a personal sphere where God is calling us to bring change, where there is anger, and God wants to empower us to start to be the leaven that changes everything. And there is a larger sphere of destiny. Because, see, the things that bother you are the things that bother God. Does that make sense? And God is looking, who will partner with me? Remember with Isaiah, he goes, who will go for us? A whole nation's turned away. They're all in horrifically devouring each other. Who will go for us? And Isaiah's like, me. Could your anger you feel be you listening to the voice of God, but then taking it in your own hands? God, what do you want me to know about this? And what do you want me to do? Who here would like to be able to be entrusted with anger by the new year? Well, I've got great news. We have the holiday season coming up. You will have many opportunities to explore this topic further as you are forced to interact with people at a much more intense level than perhaps you would prefer. But let us not be like our holy penguins, suppressing or expressing. Because I want to say this last picture. I want to leave you with a picture. Have you ever seen, I'll give you two examples. You can decide which one appeals to you. The first one is, have you guys ever found like one of those cars at like Car City or a barn find that's totally destroyed? And they show you the before and after picture. The before picture, it's just a hunk of metal. The after picture is this beautiful mint car, right? See, the problem with the question of the problem of evil is that evil is not a thing. It is not a substance. It's the absence of goodness. It's the absence of God's influence into that place. Evil is that point where people said, not your will, but my will be done. That's what it is. Imagine a barn find. You see this car, it's got weeds all over it and everything else, and you go in there and you carefully cut all the weeds out, you scrape all the rust off, and you get all the junk out, and you leave the car and take all the junk away. And that's what you take. That would be, that evil, those things are not the point. The point is the car. The point, evil is not, the enemy wants you to make evil the point. Evil's not the point. It's the junk in the way of the point. Another example, a Rembrandt. Rembrandt had this amazing gift for painting light. But many of the paintings through the years became encrusted with grime from candles and grime from air. And several of them, they would just look brown. Any of you seen that? The before and after of a restored Rembrandt? It's shocking. Again, the grime is nothing. Don't get distracted by the grime, but let him remove the grime to reveal what was always there. Evil is incapable of destroying good, because good, who he made you to be, is a diamond that cannot be touched. And so whatever the situation you're in, do not, I said this before, anything we're more impressed with than the cross is the problem. I can't afford to be impressed with the junk. I can't afford to be impressed with the grime. I can't afford to be impressed with evil so that I can be empowered by God to bring the cross to bear on evil. So, as the worship team comes, my question for each of us is this. What makes you mad? What makes you mad? It's really easy when something makes us mad. We're like, the problem's out there. Okay. What makes you mad? God, what do you want me to know about this? I find that oftentimes, almost always, he starts with me.
Jesus, thank you that you are meeting us right now. Thank you that you are God Emmanuel, God with us. And as we were talking this morning of this lie, I feel like just so many of us, this lie was highlighted that somehow God is passive or angry, but like withdrawn, and he's not with us. He's somewhere separate. And if that's your lie, just pray this with me right now. Jesus, I repent for believing a lie that you are weak, that you are passive, that you are withdrawn, that you are separate, that when I cry, you just don't cry with me. When I get angry at things, that you just stay passive and you don't get angry. I just ask you, Lord, that you just shift my perspective of you, that you will shift my picture of you right now, that you are God with me. God with me, the God that when abuse was happening to me, you were weeping. God, that when something was stolen from me, you were angry. You were not okay with things being taken. And you want to engage me right now in that place of loss, in that place of pain, in that place of abuse. You want to come and talk to me right now. Just come and just show your face. Show what your face looked like in the middle of that picture. Show me where you were, Jesus. And Jesus, show me what you want me to know about that situation, where things have been stolen from me, things that make me so angry. Just show me what you want me to know about that, who I need to forgive there, what lies I believed about myself that I need to let go of. And Jesus, what is the truth you want me to know? What is the truth you want me to know? And Jesus, I receive the truth right now, that you are with me, that you are working on my behalf to restore everything the enemy has stolen, that you are working on my behalf to turn things around, that you are working on my behalf to restore my heart, to restore relationships, to restore opportunities that were taken, to restore things that were stolen. Thank you, Jesus, that you are right in the middle of the mess. You are right in the middle of situations. You do not hide away. You do not withdraw. You do not sit back. You're right in the middle. Just show yourself to God, to us as God in the middle. As God in the middle, God among us, Emmanuel. God in the middle of my heart, in the middle of my situation, in the middle of my emotions. God who is not withdrawn. God who is not passive. God who is not indifferent. God who is not powerless. God who is not cut off from me. God who is right there with me. If the ministry teams can come up, if you need prayer for anything, if God is opening things up and stirring things, and you need prayer, they're here.
I just really feel like, though, there's some of us, God is that rage monster. And we've suffered things in our lives, and we just like, God hates me, God's mad at me. I just believe God wants to bring that same kind of revelation. Where were you when I was suffering the consequences of my actions? Where were you when I was in jail? Where were you when I lost my job? Where were you when I went into debt? Where were you? He's right there with you weeping. He's for us, not against us. It's not a God made in our own image. He is love. Fiery, passionate love.
We love you all. I just would encourage us to share with someone what God is just opening up in your heart, what He is showing us, how different He is from our perception. Please don't leave. If things are opened up, if things are just boiling in you, come get prayer. Come, even if you just turn around to someone and say, please pray for me. I'm hurting. I am just, there's just a lot going on. Just don't leave without someone engaging, someone connecting, opening up your heart. But we love you guys.
For more information, go to ariselife.org or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.